Hey, hello, good morning. I am adjusting my blanket here. I know, super exciting. How is everybody doing this morning? If anybody is here yet, I don't know. But for those of you who maybe haven't stopped by before, my name is Melody. I generally talk books. I also talk Bridgerton. We are heading into Bridgerton season. And in midst of that, we are currently finishing up a Viscount Who Loved Me read along to get us in the mood for season 3. So this is a final kind of sprint and push. I am still personally only 35% of the way through the book, but having got through like 2.5 separate romance novels last weekend, if you want to watch my March Madness style face off of 4 different romance novels, I posted that video this week, but I know I can finish. So we are going to do that and do kind of a final reading sprint push today. Long breath, sorry. If you are interested, we are also going to be doing a live discussion of the Viscount Who Loved Me more in depth, soon to be announced. We have to figure out a good time for it. And we are also going to be doing a Romancing Mr. Bridgerton read along next month in preparation for season 3. So today we are going to be reading, but I also thought it would be a good opportunity to be able to talk about some of the promo that we've been getting for season 3 and like little sprinkles of promo. I know we had kind of a false alarm with the potential of a teaser, and I should know because I'm not fully in the online like fandom spaces, but I have gotten close enough to have kind of fooled myself as well there. So when that goes up, I will react to that. We'll talk about that more in depth, but I thought that we could talk about some of the little things we've gotten because we have the Kate and Anthony stuff. Anthony, I will switch back and forth. And then we've got the mirror stuff. And then we've got yesterday, I believe it was, that the kind of visuals of Colin and Penelope, that kind of like visual poster, if you will, came out, and there is a lot going on in that one, in Kate and Anthony's as well, and I thought we could break it down and talk about it a little more in depth. It feels a little bit like breaking down an acting class exercise, sure, but sure, I think it will be fun. So I thought that this would be a good kind of space to accomplish all of that, and we will sprinkle those discussions in between our reading sprints. Excuse me as I drink some of my coffee. I apologize if that is not your jam. So if you are here, let me know. If that sounds like a plan, let me know. If you have a better plan, let me know. I can't promise that I will follow the plan, but I will take it under consideration. Wonderful. I'm so excited that you are on board. Again, we are going to be doing a more in-depth. I need to get a poll up in terms of when would be best to have that discussion because I do want to have it early April so that we have the rest of April to really focus in on, especially as I am sure promo is going to ramp up in April. I am anticipating we will get a teaser, a trailer, some combination. And yeah, so we'll see. Now, next weekend, I anticipate sometime next weekend is when we will have that live discussion, but I am out of the game Saturday because it is one of my very best friend's birthday celebrations. So I will be doing that, celebrating her all day. Happy early birthday, Mandy, because she deserves as much celebration as possible. I know all of my friends have birthdays at like the start of the year, and I am a November baby. So yes. Yes. It's going to be a fun discussion. I like having this discussion, and you let me know because traditionally, granted, I'm not like some giant creator. Don't get me wrong. I have no delusions of grandeur, but I have discussed Bridgerton since the beginning as a fan since a teenager. So I have been doing a lot more live discussions this round. One, because I just have the capabilities, but two, it's allowing a little bit more of this open-ended discussion, allows us to have a little bit more community around it. There will be more formalized kind of standalone videos when the actual season drops, but like let me know if this balance is working for you or if you find the lives a little too loose and distracting. I don't know. I want to strike a nice balance with it all, but I think being able to discuss is a really fun thing. So, with that being said, the question, thank you. Thank you. So, with that being said, the question is, do we want to start with a little promo discussion now, or do we want to kind of have this like a little check-in, little discussion, do a reading sprint, and then talk more about the promo in terms of like getting us in the right mood, in terms of allowing people to kind of trickle in? You let me know what sounds good to you. A rewatch is a great idea too. I need to do that as well. Yes. I love how many people this has introduced to not only the series, but like historical romance in general. I'm not taking that from your comment because it sounds like you are already a lover of historical romance, but just kind of revitalizing this subgenre that I have loved for a very long time. And I'm not going to lie, there's a part of me that's a little sad that we haven't seen as robust a kind of historical romance renaissance. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm already judging myself. Um, Around the popularity of Bridgerton, kind of, I don't know where that thought was going, but it feels like we had a moment that I was hoping would become a bigger moment that has become a more robust reading community. Sure. We've always been here though. So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that thought. I think the popularity of historical romance, I think I'm still, okay, tangent. In the idea of romance, and I know if you've been with me a second, you've probably heard this, so I apologize, but romance becoming more mainstream, which we love, but being stocked more in especially indie bookstores and still not seeing the balance of historical romances quite as much in that stocking. And I understand again that part of that is because of the format. So a lot of the historical romance that I traditionally am gravitating to is mass market, and that is harder to stock as an independent bookstore because of the return process and the fact that it's not a return item, it's a strip item. I will not go into that fully. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Let me know if that's too much. But yes. Okay, sorry. I'm clearly collecting my thoughts here. Yes. We are on the same page about this one. And I think this is part of it too, is I thought more places would pick up romances. And I guess part of it is, and I talked about this in my Bridgertonification video of classics. This idea that a lot of classics are adaptations of classics are adopting this kind of Bridgerton-esque tone in terms of this balancing of the kind of historical elements with the more modern elements, because again, historical romance is a really nice balance of the historical setting, the kind of fantasy of that, with more modern mindsets as well, because that's just, we're writing for modern audiences. So if you're interested in that, go to that video in more depth. But I could see them being worried about being considered copycats. But there are so many, like, why don't we have a Beverly Jenkins romance? Like I just talked about in my mass market madness face-off video, like, how fun of a world would that be to explore? And again, speaking as someone who does not like Westerns, but did listen to the Beyonce album yesterday, do not worry. So yeah, I don't know. Okay. That's kind of where I am. But despite the fact that we have not gotten that trailer, which is fine, I don't want to, like, it's a promo cycle. That's the name of the game. But I'm sorry. I promise part of 2 is like in pre-recorded videos, I can collect my thoughts a little bit more. They don't run away with me quite as much. But before we dive into fully the promo stuff, I do want to say again, I'm not fully in full depth fandom spaces, again, because I want to be able to articulate my own thoughts and I don't want them to be swayed too much, but I am a person on the internet at large, and so I'm sure you have seen this as well, but I'm starting to see like trickles of shipper wars and I don't like it. I want to tell you I don't like it because part of what I find and have always found so lovely about romance, historical romance, romance series is that we get to celebrate and enjoy all these different flavors of romance, all the different kinds of variations to romance, and get to enjoy all of those stories and be exposed to all of those stories. And so, sure, we're all going to have favorites based on our own taste. And as is evident with Bridgerton itself in terms of my reading experience, those favorites can change. So I don't like the shipper wars. And if anyone's deeper in, I don't want to go too deep, but like is that kind of surface level observation somewhat accurate? I don't know. Ooh, I have not read this series, but that sounds delightful. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where I've always been. I've always been a lurker, if you will, in fandom. And again, I know that there's some kind of hypocrisy in that statement, in that I have been talking about Bridgerton since season 1 and creating videos analysis, but I just want to talk about it. But yeah. Yeah, and that's part of it too is like I there is a difference between criticism and negativity. And I hope that anyone who has watched or been involved in this space with me, I'm not afraid to call out things that are not quite like right. Like there's always going to be some level of criticism, but the negative like fandom and I again I'm not knocking fandoms, but just some of the toxicity that can develop in certain subsections. Um, we don't want any of that. We're going to celebrate all of the couples. Though we are, of course, focusing on Canthony and Pollen today in terms of ship names. I wonder what all of the other if the other ship names are going to be a little. I know we all of them have like some variation, but I obviously when I first read these books, the internet existed, but I was not in any spaces where we were discussing Bridgerton ships with ship names. Yes. I'm season 3, I'm very excited. And for similar reasons with why Penelope was so popular in the book series, obviously, is why I think so many of us are drawn to her. I am like unquestionably a wallflower. And honestly, to a certain extent with the books, all 3 of our first heroines, and arguably more, are to some degree a wallflower, but Penelope is just like this whole other thing. And I think what we are building and what we are seeing built and set up for season 3 is just so exciting. Um, yeah, even if I am starting to lose, and setting myself up for the fact that we are not going to hide a pastry and a plant. It was a pastry, right? Like I haven't started my reread yet because I do not want to forget things, and I haven't even finished the Viscount Who Loved Me, which I love. Which okay, so yeah, I've been babbling on. Thank you, and I'm sorry. I'm glad we have such a good group of people here today to chat. I am very excited. I'm reaching over for my coffee. I'm sorry. Believe it or not, this is as much coffee as I've had today, so I don't know how I'm so awake. Okay. Do we want to speak on some of the Canthony promo before we jump into some sprints? Or do we want to just jump into the sprints and so we can have something to look forward to? We're going to, like I said, if you just hopped on, yes, this is something we are going to talk about more in depth in the Viscount Who Loved Me discussion for sure, which is going to be a difficult balance, right, in talking about the book itself and celebrating the book itself, but also looking at it in relation to the show, because that's how we are all approaching the books right now. Yes. it's a very specific kind of like quirk that we see in Quinn's work that is very much of its time. Um, I'm sure there'll be fan art somewhere of that. I agree with this. Like, and I recognize that I am very, very much attached to Penelope. I'm also very much attached to Kate. So I don't see. I'm seeing some instincts from some people to pit, and I think we see this on the internet more generally. I'm not going to like philosophize, but this idea that we have to like pit strong women or like women who we are drawn to for different reasons against each other when we can just enjoy all of the successful, strong, interesting women and enjoy them in all of their successes and their flaws, as long as, within reason, but still, yeah. Listen, the promo we've been getting, I I am very excited because I know that in the past I have talked about the idea of being interested in this series and how it's going to be translated to the screen is so interesting because traditionally in historical romance, you have your focus on your couple. And then in the preceding books, we'll see like cameos from them, but they kind of fade to the background more generally. Not all the time, obviously, but that being a really interesting setup in terms of storytelling that I haven't personally seen on the screen as often. And so in relation to season 1 to season 2, there was a lot of contentiousness there. And I was like, no, I think it's going to work. I'm excited to see what we do with this. And I know it's not going to kill the storytelling to not have Simon back for season 2. But the idea of Canthony having Kate and Anthony back in season 2 is so exciting to me. And I think part of that goes back to the storytelling in season 2. Yes, you're going to need to join us for the read along of book 3 that we are going to start in just a few days. Book 4, sorry, for season 3. Sorry to distract myself. Also, yes, the audiobooks are great. Audiobooks are great, especially romance novels. I love historical romance on audio because, yeah, audio, it's just easier to focus sometimes. And if you're like, just want to pop it on while you're doing stuff around the house like you would a YouTube video, perfect. Where was I going? Oh, okay. So the storytelling in season 2, we obviously, or not, depending on your experience with the show, lost a lot of like the newlywed stuff with Kate and Anthony because in the book we have a forced marriage based on the B scene that is much more comical in the book, and I can't wait to talk about it in more depth. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get to the B scene today in the reading sprints or when I log off to go read by myself. But there we got to the declarations of love. So we obviously got to the end of the book in terms of like thematic, like full circleness in terms of character, emotional journeys, but we still have all of this with Kate that we haven't fully explored. And I know that's been part of some of the discourse. Here I am revealing myself as further or more aware of things than I let on or really want to be. I promise I'm not diving deep into these discussions so that I can approach things with my own frame of mind a little bit more genuinely. But I think that there is that opportunity. Granted, we don't know how they're going to take it or what they're going to do with it, but there is that opportunity to see um, Kate and Anthony in that more genuine space and to have a little bit more of that vulnerability explored within a fully loving relationship where that love has been expressed potentially. Um, I You can, absolutely. Honestly, and that's one of the joys of romance novels, I think, is that knowing the other books always kind of enhances the experience when you get those cameos, but you can always read the central couple by itself. And part of that too is something that we're definitely going to talk about when we talk about romancing Mr. Bridgerton is how Colin as a character kind of changes, especially in the books, from how we see him in other books to how he behaves as a main character in his own book. And we're seeing a lot of that discussion in terms of his portrayal as well, just like in how we're seeing him in marketing versus how he's been in the first 2 seasons. And that's keeping in mind that his character is a lot different in the show than in the books. right? Because in the books, and we see it in The Viscount Who Loved Me, he's kind of like needling in the ballroom. He's much more serving the kind of what they've given Benedict to do in the show a little bit in terms of those kind of like jibes in the ballroom. But then he has a completely different tone in his own book. So when you like step into that moment when we see the passing of the baton in this promo as well, which is part of that moment. And I think that demonstrates a real understanding of the material as well. And again, I will talk about this more in depth later too, but I just am in awe, especially of Nicola in this press lead up to her so far. And I will admit that I follow her on Instagram right now, but I haven't been following Luke, so I need to rectify that. But just the way that she speaks about the craft, having been, I was a theater student, I went to theater school. That is an actor. I'm not saying like all of them are actors, right? Like the way they talk about the craft, I've always just been very impressed with the gravity they give the material. They take the emotional journeys of these characters very seriously without being self-important about it, right? They are not approaching this in a kind of cavalier way in terms of the craft. And I think that that is very evident, and I very much respect that. Yeah, exactly. You can just kind of jump in and out. And I talked about this too in my March Madness video from earlier this week, because I was reading an Eloisa James book for that was the first in a series, and I had felt bad because I kind of put it off. But then when I finally read it, I realized that one of the characters tied back to another backlist Eloisa James I had just finally gotten around to, and it was like the main confidant of one of our leads in that book. And I didn't need that extra layer. I would have gotten it without, but it was just a nice little Easter egg of sorts. And to be fair, there are times where I'm reading a romance series, and I've talked about this before too, the idea that like I have been reading as they're released, and my brain, I like to think, is pretty decent, but my memory isn't perfect, and I forget. I forget a lot of the characters. And so if I'm reading them as they're released and we're referencing a book like we're referencing a couple like 5 books back, I might not even catch it. And I have read all the books, but other people have much better brains and they do catch it. And so there's just those different levels that you can experience all within one book, but they're enjoyable at every level because the book has to stand on its own regardless. Yes, we do love hoopla. I'm more of a Libby girl by force, because I am not. I think the only early adopting I've ever done was my Kindle, or e-readers in general. But I used the Overdrive app until it forced me not to, because I liked that you could download the audiobook and then delete it off by parts. I was never that pressed for space, but I felt that pressed for space. Maybe I was. I think I was at one time. Yeah, confession, I'm not great at watching TV, despite like most of what I'm watching is in relation to books. So I still need to watch Dairy Girls, and I'm really, really ashamed about it. Yes. Yes. I've been considering, because like after this is done, like I'm having such a great time with like these read-alongs, like with these little chats. I've been considering whether we should do a different series after this or not. You let me know if this is successful, if this is enjoyable. Okay, we've been chatting for a second, which I love, but why don't we go ahead and do some reading sprints, read a little bit, reconvene, and when we reconvene, we can talk about the Kate and Anthony clip and visual poster. Trying to think of a word. Is there a word for like a video poster? Well, let's revisit that. But yes, how does that sound? Does that sound like a plan? Because I do need to read today. So, it's the Smythe-Smith. I know we knew how to say it based on Queen Charlotte, but I'm always going to forget because it's one of those things that you learned before you heard it and it just sticks in your head. It's the name of the series is the Smythe Quartet. And it's following an offshoot of the Bridgerton world, which we are introduced to in The Viscount Who Loved Me, the book, the idea of the musicale, and we start Romancing Mr. Bridgerton with that musicale. We do not know if we'll start the show with the musicale or if we'll get it, but I guess we'll find out. And it's a spinoff of that. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a Colin cameo in one of the quartet? I don't remember. What is the first one in that? Before we jump in. I hope we do too. I've been talking about this day in quartet since day one. Like, I still think there was a missed opportunity, and I apologize for all of you who have heard me talk about this ad nauseum, to have that discordant note striking in the music to have the quartet, but maybe they're leaving room for another spinoff. Maybe. Sorry, I'm looking for it, and sometimes the Goodreads setup is a pain in the patootie, but okay, the first book is called Just Like Heaven, and that should lead you to the rest of them. Okay, so let me try to get this set up. Hello, we are so glad to have you. I'm so glad to have you. I cannot speak for everyone, but I'm sure everyone is so glad to have you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the reading cat up here. Can we see the cat? Actually, I'm going to switch to just the cat. All right. So let's do 25 minutes with the cat. I'm going to read The Viscount Who Loved Me. You can read whatever your heart desires. I am not your boss. You are not on the clock. And then we will come back and talk about the Canthon promo. And just for some spoilers for other promos we're going to talk about to keep you here. I'm sorry, that tone was awful. We will talk about the mirror promo, and we will talk about that visualizer that we got the other day. Okay, so I'm going to turn my microphone off, and also let me know if the sound is okay, because I never know. There's not much I can do about it if it's not, caveat, because I am very new to all of this, but I'm trying to be aware. So, okay, so we're going to start the cat. I will see you all in 25 minutes. Okay, we are back. Got a little meow. I Let me know what you're reading and where you are. Well, you don't have to let me know where you are in your reading. If you feel like it, fine. I am obviously reading The Viscount Who Loved Me, and I just got to Pall Mall. So we're having a grand old time. I actually laughed out loud. Like not a hyperbole exaggeration, laughed out loud at the thought of Colin just tossing the purple mallet away this time. So it's not my first time reading the book, not my second time reading the book, but really enjoying that piece. So let me know what you're reading and if you're enjoying it. Yes, I do have a Goodreads. I will have to figure out how to share it potentially. I am someone that is somewhat inept with the community features of Goodreads for someone who has been on Goodreads since 2007, basically since it launched. And for a long, long time, I didn't even add people. So I'll just have to figure that out. But yes, it's a good, I mean, we'll talk about all of this more in depth to some extent, but we're not going to be able to pick apart every moment in the book bit by bit. Um, the flowers, when Anthony is first bringing Edwina flowers and courting her, and you could be talking about a different scene because I think that's a reoccurring thought in the book, but just like the bittersweet nature of that really hit me this time. This idea that Kate is always experiencing or getting her flowers secondhand from Edwina, and she is still so delighted in them and is still like taking moments to literally smell the flowers, like when she goes to the garden, when she gets to Aubrey Hall at the house party. It's just the little bittersweet moments that are so good, which is another reason I think we are all drawn to all these characters, but to Penelope in particular, who we've gotten to know over the course of the book. And an upcoming scene that I haven't gotten to yet, but know is there, was one in relation to Penelope that I was kind of sad got left out of the book, in that Kate first really warms to Anthony in the book, at least to my recollection of my last reread, when she sees him stand up for Penelope at the house party. And so there's just like that moment of clarity there, and it kind of brings everyone together. Listen, we support a calling your mother moment, or your mother calling. Um, yes. Yes. So that is where I personally am. And that means that we are in a good moment. I'm trying to think of how to do this because I've not really done this level of live stream before. But let me, I have my Bookstagram up and we can look. I don't know what the rules are in terms of like what I can share and what I can't. And we've all seen this promo, I am sure. So let me just, did I have the cat up the whole time? Let me pull up this. Okay. So I particularly want to talk about the scene they gave us and this visual guy. So I'm going to open this and I'm going to hope it's muted because I don't really want to play the audio because I think we have seen that and I don't know if that's a problem. I obviously hate that this is like configured for vertical, but I mean, it's what we got. So just this moment, just seeing them happy together. This is what really gave me hope of what we're going to get from them in this next season. And I tried not to speculate too much, but just the lightness there and the playfulness. It's just really lovely. The wistfulness there hurts my heart a little bit, but like also the contentment. So, oh, the cat thinks we should be done. with our break, but we are not done with our break. This moment with Penelope, there's a lot going on in this little clip. I think it's a really good bridge promotion in terms of like a scene. So that obviously is one of the big things we've gotten in relation to both promo and to Canthony, but then also this visual, these little visualizers. I don't know what we call these. I'm really loving these like little visual posters. They also like again make me feel like I'm back like in acting class where you're given like an exercise without dialogue and you have to communicate. But here we just have happiness. And okay, I'm not going to keep this on just like a repeat, I promise. So that is what I want to discuss for this brief respite from reading and what everyone is thinking about those little promo pieces, the visuals of them, what we think the promo team is trying to tell us with that, what we think of what we've got in relation to that. Oh yeah, that's gonna be a good buy. I've held off. I don't know. I've debated a lot with like limited editions of stuff, but I still need to get because I have my copy of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton that I bought for 10 cents in a library sale in like 2000, probably 7, that I love dearly. But I'm realizing it doesn't have the second epilogue in it if we want to discuss the second epilogue in the read along. So I'm going to have to make a choice there. Yes, I'm loving just like the natural chemistry, the love that we see there. Oh, okay. I was like, I knew I had a specific thought here. The energy that we are getting from these two reminds me of the tea scene in the book that we obviously didn't get. But just this moment of him being entirely besotted, though he's too emotionally constipated at that moment in the book to kind of recognize that fully, the emotions attached to it, but he is just ready and willing. And that is very much the energy that I'm getting here. I love that kind of intimacy that it illustrates these different kinds of intimacy, but the comfort level there, the casualness, and just that ease. I'm really, really enjoying that in these clips. And it definitely, I guess I kind of wanted to get other people's feelings about that. If that brought to mind the tea scene to anyone else, if we think that that means or is an indicator that that kind of energy is being funneled into something that where we could see things from the second half of the book in terms of that, those emotional plot points that were left out, maybe in terms of Kate's fear of storms more, because I was so excited when we got the library scene in season 2, but it wasn't the library scene I wanted fully. Not that I want to see. I don't know. So, yes. And I think too, it really emphasizes this idea of how she's presenting herself to the world too, that she does still feel very uncomfortable in her own skin. And it's like this kind of like self-perpetuating cycle because she has a reason to feel uncomfortable in those spaces because she has been overlooked. But then because she has experienced that so much, she brings that insecurity to the table. I know I'm guilty of this in my own life, I'm sure. And so her feeling discomfort then presents itself. And it's just also that really relatable moment of looking stunning in the corner and not feeling it, like fiddling with yourself, like the movements of that. I thought that that was a really great visualization. And again, to be able to have that moment that was just like so happy with Kate and Anthony and getting to relive the happiness of the last season and the note we ended on and kind of moving in to what we've got there. I also believe that visually that ties into the Valentine's Day clip we got, but correct me if I'm wrong, but that would support the theory that we talked about during that live, that she is coming from something. Like when they said the first 2 minutes of the season, I was like, this is not the start of the season. This is an early 2 minutes for sure, but not the first 2 minutes. So First, in the sense that it was the first 2 minutes that we received as viewers, clearly. So I don't know if anybody else has any more thoughts about the Canthony stuff for Kate and Anthony and what you think that we are going to get from them in season 3, what you want to get from them in season 3, anything about the promo. Yes, we will be discussing that. I guess I was going to save that for the next reading, for the next sprint, for a little tease, but we will be discussing. I have a lot of thoughts. There were a lot of texts sent that day. And they knew what they were doing. I think was it something that said, actually, let me check my texts because I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here in silence. Well, I mean, I guess we did just sit here in silence for 25 minutes, but I'm not going to read through that. But I had a thought about some verbiage in relation to that teaser saying like teasing, and I'm like, I don't know if this is teasing so much as taunting at this point, but anybody else have anything they want to discuss before we jump into some more sprints, and then we will come back and discuss the mirror. Let me just double check something here. Let me just double check my notes to make sure I didn't have anything written down in relation to Anthony and Kate. I don't think I currently do. If you have thoughts that come up about the Canthony stuff and that promo, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can swing back. For now, let's go ahead and go into another sprint. When we come back, we will talk about the mirror. Sound like a plan? Deal? Let me know. All right, I'm just going to go for it because I want to keep reading Pall Mall, and then I want to talk about the mirror. And so that's what we're going to do. All right. Okay, we are back. I just basically got through Pall Mall and I'm to the retrieving of the ball because I got distracted. If you go, I have in the description box the links to the discussion boards on Storygraph for both of the read-alongs, which admittedly haven't been super robust, but I think everyone, I'm assuming we're all kind of in the same boat where we've been waiting to the 11th hour to finish the reread. So I've been trying to post in there as I think of things or as things strike me. And one of the boards, excuse me, is songs that make you think of Canthony. And the song I got distracted by thinking of a song. And it's not so much Canthony as like all romances forever and always. I can't help thinking at a certain point of the play song from their genius 2003 album Play Replay, Let's Get to the Love Part. So for any other people, specifically millennials, that came up with all of the girl groups and teen groups of the time, that song is in my head always. And it's a great little chorus for your romance reading. How did everybody else do with their reading or task sprint, whatever you're doing? I got to this scene in our last sprint session, since I clearly haven't picked this book up or not read nearly enough of this book since that last sprint session. In my defense, again, I did read 4 other romances for a video this week, but yes, that is an undoubtedly fun scene. Anybody else have anything to report in terms of reading or tasks? I know I usually am throwing stuff on while I'm doing the dishes and other unfun things. I also want to give us a little bit of a buffer here so that everyone can be back, since we are going to discuss the mirror scene, or at least what we have got in terms of the mirror scene, which appears to be just like a promo video. Unclear if this will appear in the season in a similar way to what we got, if it will appear. I know there's been some speculation of if it's even real. I personally, if they have teased us so much with this, like visually, mostly visually, I mean audibly, they've referenced it a lot, right, in interviews and things. If they've referenced and teased this so much, and it's not an actual scene and is like a fantasy. I mean, fantasies can be fun, but we'll see. We'll see what we're gonna look at it, and we're gonna get people's thoughts. But I just again want to give a little buffer here. So go ahead and let me know what you're thinking in whatever way. And I am going to pull up yeah, their ability to style, specifically from men, I think I am in awe of it, because men are so hard to, like, at least in my conception of it, so hard to style because their styles change so little compared to women. And so it's hard to look at a man in early seasons and like visualize the glow up there and how they're going to center someone in an upcoming season. I mean, they're all undoubtedly attractive men, do not get me wrong, but especially like that first transition we saw from Anthony from season 1 to season 2, it was like, oh, there are choices being made here and they're fascinating. And I think, again, those choices really support and mirror this idea of someone kind of existing in the background within this world, though with more activity, so arguably, in the show, because they have to have their own kind of journeys. But to have them take center stage in that way is very interesting. And I think that they're pulling it off incredibly well. Yeah, I am nervous about the bait, but at the same time, I am glad that they are so in touch with the source material with what fans are interested in, especially as this is kind of the centralized focus point for them really emphasizing, and we'll see how it pans out, how much desire and intimacy is going to play out in this season. And we've seen them talk about this in their I've seen Nicola talk about this in press too. And I was going to talk about this later, but I think now is probably a good time to touch on it, especially in relation to intimacy coordination, which I think is incredibly important. I have been so glad since day one to know that there's an intimacy coordinator on this show. The way they talk about that relationship and that collaboration sounds incredibly healthy to me, and is another kind of emphasis or a reason that I really commend and view Nicola as such an artist. I mean, all of them, but just like the way she talks about the craft is incredibly interesting because she really is emphasizing the collaborative nature of things and how everyone is working together to tell the story. And I know there's been a lot of talk about her talking about how her and Luke contributed to these scenes and the choreography of these scenes, which I think there's a couple layers there because one, there is undoubtedly the storytelling angle of this. So there is going to be a mission that we're going into these scenes with, right? In the same way that we talk about in romances, in historical romances in particular, these kind of intimacy scenes really forwarding something, whether it is something, I mean, most usually something in the relationship between these two characters, some kind of development. There's some dynamic there that is at play that is forwarding something in the story. So by that nature, there is going to be a storytelling purpose, duality to those scenes, that there's something that has to be communicated through choreography. But I think it's incredibly important that the actors were involved in that discussion, in that process, because that is such a tender kind of thing. And if they hadn't been involved, if there hadn't been those open levels of communication as indicated, I would be more concerned. Granted, every relationship with collaboration and intimacy coordination is going to look different. I personally have not worked with an intimacy coordinator directly. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not an actor, I am a dramaturg. So I have historically done a lot of like the research stuff, literary development, but I have been in rehearsal rooms, and more specifically, in this case, I have not been in rehearsal rooms in relation to a production of Spring Awakening, for instance. If you're familiar with that musical, there is a very specific scene in there that has to be navigated and is very hard in terms of that navigation, for lack of a better word in this moment. So that was a closed room rehearsal. So just having the space and the privacy and that open communication for these kinds of things, I think is incredibly important. And how they are talking up this intimacy, which is incredibly important and validating in terms of what Penelope in particular represents for so many people, especially how they are approaching Penelope. I know we will talk about this more in relation to the book, but there is like the body image aspect of things and the idea of the fact that we haven't seen this kind of desire, open, hungry desire portrayed in quite this way. Granted, again, I'm not, you know, I haven't seen everything in the world, far from it, but this means a lot to a lot of people. And so them being so unabashed about it is refreshing and incredibly important to me personally. Like, it means a lot to see that and to hear that. And we are seeing that more specifically in this little teaser we got. So let me pull it up. You let me know what you're thinking. On the side, I have been very lucky in that I haven't seen any of the hate or the pushback that I've heard referenced, and I have no interest or intent to go looking for any of it. So I also thank all of you for being basically, to my like view, on the same page that I am. Yeah, same. Yep. And she's gorgeous. Like, she's gorgeous. And like, just like, listen, I'm not gonna, I don't want to sit here and comment on people's bodies, but that's what I'm gonna say. Okay, so let's pull this guy up. Just the looks here, the acting, those little breaths. Okay, let's talk about it. Let me get this. All right. So, one, like, just yeah, just the looks there, and it's hard because something like that, especially like divorced of its context, can sometimes read a little corny and awkward. Like, that's just the fact of it, and I think that that read incredibly well. The fact that they've been teasing this idea of the mirror for book readers, we know what the promise of that mirror is, and the fact that they're building on this promise that's just referenced offhand in the book. I mean, in a very charged, sensual offhand, but offhand nonetheless. We don't see the realization, the actualization of that. So are we going to see the actualization of that in whatever form? But this idea of looking in the mirror and coming to face with yourself in whatever way, which we talked about, or I mentioned in relation to just the promo image of Pin seeing herself in the mirror, what that represents for her character journey as we've seen it so far, but then also just like the acceptance of that in terms of desire and accepting yourself, and moving from a wallflower to someone who is accepting that they are worthy of that kind of desire. And I think that that is going to be incredibly interesting. Have so much fun tie-dyeing eggs. That's so much fun. That's going to be a delight. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. The hand touching. Yes. Yes. I do want to say before we move fully into like the more serious breakdown of that, there were a couple of visual things that jumped out at me at first view. One, bronzer. Anybody else with the bronzer? I mean, it could be the lighting too, but I was just like, as a very, very pale person, not on Nicola, not on Penelope. Colin had some bronzer. Also, every visual of Penelope this season so far, I want to know what her lip combo is. I'm not like a particularly knowledgeable person. Like, I'm not like a beauty influencer by any means, but I want that lip combo. Yes. Yes. That dress, the colors. I'm going to be paying a very close attention to the colors they put her in this season. That green dress from the beginning, gorgeous. If we can bring that color back into some options for purchasing more readily in the main consumer market, I would be pleased as punch. But paying attention to like all those pale blues, which are obviously tying her in to Bridgerton, but just the intensity of the looks in this shot. We've got the hesitancy at first, this idea of like really fully taking herself in, him coming in. There's all these like very clear acting beats to this, right? Like the work without dialogue. There's a better term for that, but I'm not thinking of it right now. Is very, very good here, for especially because like we don't know, like, is this just something that was filmed for promo? It could have been, especially with the way he's just kind of like slinking out of the shadows. But sorry, I'm just watching it again and again to kind of try like the really like self-conscious petting of her own hand, the kind of self-soothing there, the way like there's just so many little movements, and it's that was a weird face. I'm sorry. It's not like over analyzing to look at those moments, because that's part of the storytelling and that's part of what we're supposed to be paying attention to in something like this. And I always joke that like in college, we used to have to do production analysis papers, basically, where we would focus on specific design elements in a production and make a case for how those elements served the point of the show or the theme of the show, the concept of the show, and what story the director was trying to tell based on those choices, which like fandom is just that all the time, just all the time analysis, which if I had like had a better, it was early days of like Tumblr when I was in college, which is probably for the best. But like I can only imagine taking that level, like it is taking that level of analysis to the media you enjoy. Yes. The looks are intense. And there's that intimacy too. Like the differentiation of the looks between like Anthony and Kate in season 2, where it's two strangers that have this intense attraction and the sparks and the butting of heads flying there in that dynamic, coming over to two people who have known each other forever, are friends, friendly. I mean, not at the start of the season, which we'll look at that clip as well, but having to view them in another way, coming back to the mirror. I think that in many ways is really smart of them adopting this idea of the mirror, similarly to how they've taken the bee out of book 2 and like put it as like this overarching thing across the series and this overarching symbolism of Bridgerton. And I think I read in one of their recent like press releases for a partnership with a brand or artist or something about like the feminine like feminist undertones of like the bees because of like the queen bee, and it reminded me of like when I was rationalizing some design choices on a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream based on my research. Like the choice had already been made and I was like, yeah, the research definitely supports this choice. And it's similar to that in some ways, but the mirror makes sense to me because it is this moment that is textually rooted. We see it in the book offhand, but then we can extrapolate on that. And it's a visual shorthand for, again, that character development, that relationship development. And there's a lot of symbolism that can exist within that visual while also still referencing back to the original text. So I think it's just a really smart choice while also being incredibly intimate and sexy at the same time. We might be getting a siren here shortly, just benefits of living on a busy street. And it seems like they're preparing us for it, right? Which does make me very interested and curious. Sorry for my straw just being in frame all the time. Of the like structure of the season and like the breakdown and what we're going to get when, because we know there's going to be a cliffhanger of some kind at the end of the first half. But what kind of cliffhanger? How unsatisfied are we going to be? And to a certain extent, I understand that like there's going to be that tension. That's part of dramatic action. They're splitting it for a reason. They're trying this out. I'm like sure. And I think too, when we're talking about the promo cycle for this, and one, I don't know that we can judge it against prior seasons because the prior seasons have been such anomalies in terms of the way the world was for filmmaking at the time that those seasons came out, but also because this is a deviation in terms of how we're splitting it up. So I mean it's clearly going to be later in terms of what we're getting, but we're clearly getting the teaser and the full trailer closer to the release of part 1 because then there's going to be part 2 too, so we have to kind of like maintain. And while they clearly are engaging with fans through these like snippets that we're getting, they also like a lot of that promo is for people they're trying to bring into viewing for a new season, which is also an interesting conundrum or like thing to think about because generally you are having to kind of like maintain an audience across seasons, which we are obviously doing, but there's this such a shift in focus between seasons too that there is this opportunity to bring in new people. I don't know, it's just there's a lot to consider and there's a lot at play and I'm very excited for all of it, but just the depth of that. Yes, I would agree with this. I am very much have historically been an enemies to lovers girly too. And I know that that has become a little bit more weighted in recent years. Like, and I think that we've seen some watering down of things in terms of just like the shorthand of it. And I'm never going to be like blasting the shorthand because like that's how we find what we're interested in, and we are attracted to certain tropes and gravitate toward them. And I've always gravitated toward that tension, toward that banter. And I think here we're going to be bringing in a lot of that history, but we've set up that tension and that banter in a way we do obviously in the book as well. And I have opinions about the book that I'm sure we'll go into more in depth when we talk about that book, but I've made them known in the past. I think the book itself structurally is a little odd because it feels like two very different things, in the fact that the book is keeping the secret of Lady Whistledown from the reader for the first half. So we don't have that constriction in the show. So that's opening up some stuff there. At the same time, that's also offering this opportunity, and I the structure is going to be so vastly different. And I promise this all circles back because the structure, I'm wondering like how much intimacy, how the intimacy is going to be distributed across the series. Like, is it going to be, are we going to get any of that steamier intimacy in the first half, or is it all going to be weighted in the second half like we see with season one? And what is that going to look like? So, and it may be like the first half is more that tension, that slower burn intimacy that we saw in season two and the payoff of that. Maybe we'll see some more of the payoff of some of that season two intimacy with Kate and Anthony. I don't know. I just like this idea of the deepening of relationships. And I think that this mirror scene tease, taunt, if you will, is a good indicator of that. And again, they've been talking about that intimacy and really seeming to prep us for a lot of that. We've also had references to the carriage, which we haven't seen in actuality. We've just had an Instagram story tease that it has been viewed, or at least that's all I've seen. Yeah. And that's, and again, that goes back to the beauty, I think, again, of romance series, in that we can explore all these different flavors and styles of romance. We can get different tastes of different things and enjoy all of it. And that's part of what I love. Like when I find a series that I am attracted to, like, was it last year or the year before that Lisa Kleypas's Ravenels finally finished up? But that series was my first Kleypas series, and it, what, how many books were in that? Like, I want to say close to 12. And I feel like she was more on a one book a year schedule. Don't even get me started on the publishing schedules of romance authors getting bumped up. But that was a long time. And so there were so many different stories and different variations of the stories that could be told across that. And I was there for all the characters. But of course, I'm going to have favorites, just like we do with Bridgerton. If you read the whole series, you are going to have favorites, and your favorites are going to be different than my favorites. As I've said before, my favorites are different than my favorites when I first read the series. So it's fascinating and fun. I know. Just like, it's gonna be, I'm very excited about the carriage scene. I know a lot of people too are with me on um wanting the parlor scene with the Featheringtons, because that's like a different kind of like fantasy that we love. Like, not a different kind of intimacy, that idea of someone like standing up for you, and Penelope getting someone to stand up for her, getting someone to see her so clearly, which again goes back to the symbolism of that mirror, this idea that not only is she facing herself for the first time, really, because a lot of her actions have been kind of her diverting herself from herself while still stepping in to the power that she can claim in whatever way, but someone else seeing her so clearly, because a lot of her frustrations and the tensions in her relationship so far in the series, including the tensions that we currently have with Eloise, which stink because we love that friendship. It's not in the books, but it does make sense. I I get it. I don't love it either, but I get it for both of their character development. And I think we're just going to have to get comfortable with it based on what was talked about at the Valentine's Day promotion. But even her people closest to her haven't always fully seen her. She has, or she hasn't always been or felt fully seen by them. And I think this goes back to some things I talked about in my book review for Dead Things Are Closer Than They Appear, which is a YA, like, zombie apocalypse fantasy comedy romance book. So different, but talking about this idea of not feeling like the first chosen and how that can impact us, but also how we can behave toward others based on that feeling, and how sometimes that makes us a little more selfish. So I think that there is a really interesting depth there, and I think that this illustrates that this is also exploring similar variations of that depth. I'm going to catch up real quick here. I'm behind by like 3 books. I think 2 books. I'm behind by a few books, but I have, yeah. And that feels very much like historical mystery romance bones to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, I really enjoy that series too. Wait, the carriage scene? Also, I thought you were doing eggs. But the carriage scene is an hour long? No. Are we getting like a bottle episode carriage scene? Can you imagine? Oh no, I'm with you. I'm with you. They're saying the eggs are in an hour. Okay. I was like, there's no way. Sorry. Oh, sorry for the cackle there too. But would love to hear your thoughts on the mirror stuff we've got then. So, yeah, everyone's ready for a 1 hour carriage scene now. Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, as painful as it is, one, to really acknowledge the depth of female friendships, the depth of female friendships at that age, the kind of delicate nature of female friendships at that age, but more importantly, how you can hurt a friend so much more sometimes than any other relationship when you have that trust and that intimacy, and you know where the knife wounds are. And like, obviously we've seen this on both sides of this relationship, and just what that's going to be. So clearly at least 1 second epilogue is completely out the window. Is it Eloise's second? Is it Eloise's second epilogue or Penelope's second epilogue that has the wedding? I don't remember. But yes. So I think there's so much to talk about with this like short little clip. And again, like, I commend them because it would be so easy for this to read corny, but I think that there is just such a depth of emotion especially in the acting, and it's part of that, them taking the source material seriously, them taking their characters seriously, and most importantly, taking love stories seriously, because those are one of the more common, like, interpersonal relationships, the real kind of domestic, for lack of a better word, which I know I say way too much. I have those phrases and those words that I just kind of cycle through. Sometimes in specific videos, like, one word will just get stuck in my head and I will say it so many times. And trust me, I am as annoyed by it as you are. Yes. Yes, I am. I hadn't even thought about that actually, but yes. Okay. Okay. So and it's going to be so interesting to see how we get here, where this comes, because I don't have a sense of how they're going to pace things out. Like, how much of this other guy are we going to have in the balance? How much of the subplots are we going to have in the balance? I don't know. Like, how balanced is it going to be, I guess? Because obviously I'm fine. I'm fine with Kate and Anthony. Yes. Which looks so good. So good on her. And just her eyes. Some of Ashley's eyes. Her eye acting is fabulous. Yes. Well, and I think the groveling one is warranted. um it's going to have to happen. Actually, you know what? I was going to save this, but let's just talk about it now. What do you say? Should we just talk about the visualization, like the Colin Penelope visualizer, because we've been here for a while. Yeah, let's talk about this, shall we? In Sorry, I'm going through all of the rigmarole. All right. These dummies. Like, I don't know what I was expecting from them in terms of like the visualization of their relationship. Okay, I'm not gonna play it ad nauseum, but that's our reminder of what we're working with. I will probably play it ad nauseum for myself because there's just so much depth to these, like this idea. Okay, let's break it down beat by beat, right? Like she's looking at him, she can't help herself, but she's pissed. He's like, oh, okay. She's chin up, like that, like, okay, I can do this. I'm mad. And he is unsettled. Like the loading sign is visible. I don't know that I had a good visualization for befuddled before, but I think we can make a case for befuddled. Let me know your opinions on the befuddled, or if you have a better word. But I love it. I love that tension. I love that he's thrown off kilter because it's always been her kind of playing to his tune and him being used to that and taking it for granted. And not in a malicious way, just in an oblivious way. Except we could engage with that comment in different levels of oblivious, because I think it's more of an argument can be made for oblivious for his comments in the book. These comments were a little different, and the reaction to that, how that's going to play out, is going to be very interesting. Of course, we've got the bronzer back because he has been abroad, presumably. I'm not saying it's super obvious. To be clear, it's just like he's so much darker than her because she's so pale, and I feel it. Again, her lip combo here, fantastic. I want it. The dress is gorgeous. I've seen a lot of people talking about the height difference in this clip. And as much as I've kind of like complained about how Ali Hazelwood really fixates on the height difference, and again, I get it. There are things that I as a reader fixate on and like to see in my romances. I'm like, okay, maybe girl, I get it. Maybe I get it. Because, okay, I don't know. And I guess I just wasn't expecting it from them. I hadn't really thought about it and then what that was going to bring to the table. But also him kind of having to stoop down to her level a little bit then. And because of that, it's like he's so much taller than her. She's like, mm-mm. And then he's having to like look down a little bit, like not in a bad way, but like in a way where he's like, oh, he's not centered anymore. All right. I feel like I've just been talking at you. I mean, to a certain extent, like what else are we going to do? That's the name of the game. So let me know if you think I'm on the right track with any of what I'm thinking here, if you're thinking something else. But yes, very much so. Very much so. And too, like the little movements, like look at his hand behind. I say like we're all watching this together, but like the hands, her gloves, I love. They're the same glove. This is the same outfit from the mirror scene, it seems. The gloves I love and are completely ridiculous at the same time, but like how kind of poised and staged she's trying to be with her hands, and how he is fidgeting. He definitely wants to touch her, and recognizes that he can't. We might have some more noise interference here. Sorry. That's just life in an apartment that I am, yeah. So I assume that this is like the stasis, like the starting point of their energies, which implies that he's gonna have to do some groveling, which we see supported by those first 2 minutes that were again an early 2 minutes, but not the first. And someday I'll shut up about that. But for now, I'm into my coffee and slightly tickled. But yeah, I'm gonna be so interested because we get to the other clip we saw, which again, like they said the first 2 minutes, but we had the clip. Hadn't we already had the clip? The blue eyes like drawing room clip. I'm still confused. Maybe I'm just confused about the framing. But um yeah, I cuz like I'm always that person when you're on a dating website. I'm not saying, that's a different, but like there's always the guys that are like if it matters. And I tried to do reconnaissance. I was like maybe I'm the anomaly, but I've never thought about it that much. Always just thought it was a joke, like an internet joke. I understood that like people were like attracted to that, like in fiction and whatnot, like that was a trope. But like, I just hadn't thought about it. I guess, yeah, that was yes. And I think we are starting to see a lot more diversity of pairings in terms of body type as well, which is fabulous. And I definitely want that to continue. And I think that this is part of that as well, which I love. But yeah, like I guess I just hadn't thought about it as deeply as maybe I should have. Um, but they look so good together. Oh, sorry, the drawing room. Like how quickly we're moving out. How much he grovels. Whether it's like a quick like he apologizes and she kind of just accepts it or tries to move on, tries to be tougher. She's like, I'm better than this. I'm over it. Which I know, I think my instincts say that that may be where the storytelling is going just from people's behavior. Like, she's mad and he'll try and assist her in this endeavor to kind of get back into her good graces, and she'll act like she's over him and over the incident in an effort to be stronger and move on and be better and like this new Penelope that she's trying to make happen. But we know that there's a lot more emotional depth there for her, and that those feelings are sometimes, unfortunately, harder to get over than you may hope. So I don't. I'm so excited to see what this is going to shape up to. And I do think that the promotion is really striking a nice balance right now of throwing things at longstanding fans of the show, fans of the book, that are referential to things that we know, like inside baseball kind of stuff. I don't know baseball, but I do know Bridgerton. And so I think that, and it's also sexy enough and intimate enough that it is piquing the interest of people that may still be on the outside. And I think that then leading up to this new season, and again, it's a completely different, going to be a different thing. We've got a new couple, a new structure, a new showrunner, and I'm really excited about all of it and to see what different dynamics we play with here. And I think we've got some really promising. Oh, a Dorleen kiss would be good. What if he's leaning on the mirror? What then? What would we do then? That that is a noble goal. I will not be trying to get my mom to read the series. It's not going to be her cup of tea. I know that for sure. Actually, you know what? Let me put this back up for just a little bit so that we can anybody has more thoughts about it. Because there is anger in that first glance too. The breath work there. Okay, I will stop. Sorry. Or not. I don't know. We're all here having fun, right? Anybody else have thoughts in relation to that, or in relation to what we have got so far? We've been here for a couple hours, so I might not put us into another sprint. I may save that for myself. But if we have more to talk about in relation to what we're hoping for season 3, the promo cycle so far, the couples so far, I am happy to continue to chat about it because it's fun. And I mostly, actually, let me scour my texts real quick to see if there are any gems that I am forgetting in terms of my own cleverness, which is fleeting but occasional. Yes, the pulling these images just for the thumbnail for today, so obvious. Like if you look at the space between Penelope and Colin versus the space between Anthony and Kate in these mirroring kind of couple visualizers, purposeful, obviously, telling, of course. Listen, all of our boys are emotionally constipated and just slightly stupid, but not full stupid. Like he knows. He knows. And he's gonna recognize what he took for granted, which I think is fair. Like we all take things for granted. And we don't know until it's gone. I feel like you are correct. Which is also another thing that gets referenced a lot and I didn't have a good visual for. I think you are correct. That being said, I have jaw issues, so I don't know. It's always nice to see people with functional. Oh, I remember what I was doing. I really appreciate you being so active on the live and like chatting. Like this is so fun, and I appreciate you as well. So it's always nice to have some, because I'm new to all of this. I'm not, again, I have no delusions of grandeur, so I never know what to expect, and if anyone will even be here, because your time is valuable, and I recognize that. So yeah, that's what I got. I did text my friend about the bronzer. Oh, I found the text I was looking for earlier where I said the mirror. Oh, I'd seen a tweet that said, or I'd seen something about a soft launch of the mirror. And I said, I don't know if it's a soft launch as much as a blatant taunt. Like that, there's nothing soft about that launch. Okay, good. Because I never know. And you know what? Actually, that brings a thought in my head too, because we're watching the transition of like someone that's like a side character, like a wallflower, someone who considers, themselves a sidekick in whatever way, or has felt put into that position, step into the limelight. It's just gonna be so much fun. It's gonna be so much fun. And I'll be interested to see how everyone develops this season. And I know there's been a lot of discourse about them going out of order. I don't really care at the end of the day, like as long as we get the stories. And that could be just because, I love Benedict, but I also love Penelope. So like, I don't know, maybe it's just a bias there. But I also do trust that they are setting up a lot of fixes for his book in this delay in terms of the kind of maneuvering of his character, and I am excited to see that as well. So I'm like, I want it all, right? Like I want all of the stories. So, well, I am happy to have you here. I talk about lots of books. Bridgerton. I do talk about other historical romances on main videos. I talk about things that are very different from historical romances on main. I don't know. They need a lot of okay. Benedict, and I talked about this in a video years ago at this point about rereading Benedict's book because I just needed to vent. And keep in mind, I love Bridgerton. But when I was a teenager, Benedict's book was my favorite. I loved the Cinderella story of it all. And I think, based on my ratings from the time, Anthony's was my least favorite. And now it's like the exact opposite. And I'm sure we will talk about this so much more if and when, I mean, not if, when Benedict's season is announced. There are certain like ridiculous things from the book I do hope stay. I I do hope the pillow moment stays, if you know what I'm talking about. Is it absurd and ridiculous and cringy? Yes. But if they change the context of it slightly, I think it shows like his slight obliviousness because some of this is, I think, with Colin and Benedict specifically, them being not the heirs and having to navigate what their life looks like, finding purpose for themselves, situating themselves and finding their place in society proper when that place hasn't been carved out for them, which I think is understandable and relatable. So like a theme for Benedict in his book is this idea of being the second son and always viewed as the second son and number two. And so then we move on to Colin and he is dealing with variations of a similar kind of insecurity. And so I don't remember where I was going with that. So it informs a lot of their emotionally constipated choices, just in the same ways that Anthony's responsibility informed his emotionally constipated choices. And I've clearly decided that that is how I'm going to refer to that. However we feel about that, I have really clung on to emotional constipation. Yes, we are going to do a live for the read along. So once it's the end of the month and we've officially finished the Viscount Who Loved Me, which I will finish in the 11th hour, we will have a live at some point to talk about it more in depth. So to focus on Kate and Anthony. So I don't know when that is going to be yet. I need to do a poll to find out when people are interested in. I do know, as I mentioned before, it will not be on Saturday because it is one of my very, very best friend's birthdays. Well, her celebration of her birth with her friends, of which I am one. So we will be talking about it. And I anticipate we will do similar things for Romancing Mr. Bridgerton in terms of doing some reading sprints, which I'm new to. And I'm anticipating a trailer dropping at some point, which I will probably maybe do a dedicated video for. And then if I don't know if we want to do like a live discussion, I don't want to like burn anybody out on any form. I don't know. I just want to strike a nice balance of, because I love talking about it with people who love talking about it, but I'm also not a full Bridgerton channel because I do like talking about all kinds of books. So just trying to maintain a somewhat balance, but it's Bridgerton season. It's going to be really, really Bridgerton heavy here for a while, historical romance heavy, in the same way like I talked about other books and historical romances to read if you liked The Buccaneers that was on Hulu Plus based on the Edith Wharton novel that we read and talked about, similar to that maybe, but amped up. I don't know. I'm open to hearing what you guys are interested in as well, obviously, because it's a group project in many ways. That means a lot to me. That means a lot to me because that's like why I first started doing this, was just to talk about books because I liked the idea of like discussing the book. It's a review, but it's not at the same time, in the sense of I consciously don't give star ratings in my Feature Fridays because I want to dive into the books and have that discussion, open that discussion of them as a work without it ending in me giving it something that's more, I don't know. I have a better way of articulating that at some point, but yeah, that that means a lot. That means a lot because I never know how people end up here, and I'm always grateful that people have. I don't take that for granted. I mean, it's a lot of these lives are nice too because it's a lot of feeling like you're kind of just talking into the empty void sometimes, and so it's nice to have this community or a space for a little bit more community here. So if you're ever on a video and like you feel weird about leaving a comment, don't like it doesn't have to be one, don't feel pressured ever to leave a comment. But two, like if you just want to say, hey, like don't be afraid to, because I know sometimes I am. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to think of this really profound thing to say to someone in the comment section. And I'm trying to get better about that myself. Just being like, hey, like, nice to see ya. Um, yes. So my current plan, thoughts welcome, is especially since we're getting in two parts. So with Bridgerton season 2, as many of you probably know, I did those in 2-episode chunks, discussion, just videos, which thinking back to that time is a lot. Like, loved the season, obviously, but all of that was happening after my grandfather died. That I'm only laughing because it's awkward, and it was sad. But I don't want us to be sad now. We're not sad now in this moment, to be clear. But I was trying to like was getting all of those up amidst all of that. So I don't know if I'm going to do like part 1 all at once and part 2 all at once. Is kind of like what I'm leaning toward in terms of like sit down, my more collected, ideally thoughts in what we're looking at, and maybe an all together. I don't know. And then after that comes out, having a live discussion of some sort where we can kind of chat more generally about what we're looking at. So having like the edited video and then having a live discussion is my current thought on it. But I don't know if we want to break it up even more than just part 1 and part 2 and do more like episode specific. If we want to have like episode by episode live discussions, like let me know what you're thinking and I can take under consideration in terms of like what my schedule allows and what we're leaning toward. Yeah. Because I was just talking without looking. So let me know what's sounding good to you. Yeah, just because I'm open. Early on, I tried to restrain myself because again, I didn't want to burn anybody out on anything either, or like just my channel to become only Bridgerton, but it's Bridgerton season. So we're gonna enjoy it while we got it. And I plan on also doing, I've mentioned before, I plan on also doing book recommendations for other historical romances that fit in similar realms to Penelope and Colin. So let me know what you're thinking there too, if that's something of interest. I know I did that again with the Buccaneers, which was a lot of fun. It's not the best performing video, but to be fair, none of mine are, so that's fine. Side note, I got the cold foam creamer at the grocery store last night to put in my iced coffee that I have because my brother got me an iced coffee pitcher for Christmas. It's nice. I like it. It's fun. That's all I've got in terms of the creamer. Okay, so maybe some discussion of episodes in some form. Yeah, because I've enjoyed. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a couple years, obviously, because it's been a couple years since Bridgerton season 2 came out. That was a rough year. That was a rough year, for sure. So we're glad that year is over. Okay, episode to episode lives of interest. I again do think I'll still do like a more formalized video in terms of like edited thoughts. But then we can do an episode by episode kind of breakdown. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's We're getting into busy season with work, but I'm sure I'll have time. We might have to do some like weekday evenings, but we might do weekday evenings with the reading sprints too, if we're liking that in terms of romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which we are coming into. Great, great, perfect. I love when you when you validate what I was already hoping to do because I do have some like pie in the sky um, content plans kind of mapped out for the next couple of months, especially because if I don't, I won't. Like you get busy with work and you have to have some kind of idea of what you're doing. And then you're going to read everything last minute anyway, like I did with my TBR March Madness TBR video. I'm also just a mood reader. How does everyone else read? Now I'm just sorry. Now I'm just tangenting. We've reached the tangenting part of the discussion. But I am a mood reader for sure. And I know because for Feature Fridays, I try to read new releases to support those authors when it the first year of sales really matter to an author. I don't agree with it, but it's the truth. And so I do try to react to new or discuss newer books. Um, but they always exist then. Those discussions always exist in perpetuity. Words, I know them. Um, I'm not saying you need to read only newer books, to be clear. Yeah. We'll make time for stuff because like this is fun for me too, to be clear. Like this isn't an inconvenience for me. I'm on here for a reason because I like talking about this stuff. I do have friends in my life that are Bridgerton fans. I have a whole romance book club that is like a closed friend group, mostly because so many of them, I've been trying to start a romance book club with specific friends for years, years. Um, maybe not years, but at least 1 year. And then Bridgerton dropped and people got into it. And I was able to live my dreams. And we're in kind of a flux right now because life is life and people's schedules are adult schedules. But we've been meeting since Bridgerton season 1 and it's just so much fun. And especially because everyone in that group is really drawn to historical romance. So we like pepper in mostly contemporaries, but like we read a lot of historical romance. And there's like two of us that have been reading historical romance forever. So it's kind of it's just fun. Which is why I talk about potentially reading other books together after we finish the Bridgerton read-alongs to potentially have a similar kind of experience here if you are interested in that. You need the object. Is that the object of the preposition? I'm losing it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm accidentally just clicking on things now. Yeah. And the way, okay, because I've been doing a lot more library recently. I mean, I've always been a library user, but all of my holds will come in at once because I am very lucky to live in a city with a very robust library system. And I can just put things on hold on the app. And I know, and if you are in Chicago and you don't know, you will now know, once something is in transit from one branch to another, it opens up the slot on your hold maximum so you can put another book on hold. So I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't look at the app on a very regular basis to see if something has moved to an in transit status so that I can put something else on hold. Often something else that isn't coming out until the next month. Because of like, that's part of the reason I track on those anticipated videos, which I need to do as well for April because we're going into April, which is mind boggling. Okay, I feel less bad now. And I'm impressed. I think the most library cards I've ever had was 3. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we will continue. Yeah, we'll continue. Um, but yeah, like spreading it out between Libby and physical holds. Hoopla, I like, but I don't like that I can only read it on my phone. So I really only do audiobooks on there, and the selection isn't as great as Libby. Um, so that's my thought on the apps. And what's the other one? There's another one that we have. I deleted it because I hated it so much. Actually, it looks like. Um, so that is how I feel about that app. But Libby and Hoopla is hard because it like depends too on what your library purchases. But I do like that with Libby, I can read it on both my Kindle and my Kobo. And the Kindle, you can put you can turn the Wi-Fi off and keep it if you need it. The Kobo, unfortunately, you can't. But I do like the interface of the Kobo better at times. Tangents with Melody, for your live viewing experience. Thank you for being here. But I have both. So yeah, so now, okay, so the plan, again, we are finishing the Viscount Who Loved Me. We will talk about that soon. Again, I have in the description box the read-along story graph groups, which is kind of just like a discussion board breakdown I haven't built out the boards for Romancing Mr. Bridgerton yet because we haven't started yet. And I know for this read-along, I didn't you can like lock those boards by dates, like if we wanted to have like chapter goals, but I know myself and I knew I probably wouldn't get things read in time and then I'd feel bad and guilty about it. And it's not that serious. And I didn't want anyone else to not get to something in time for that like goal date and then feel bad about it because it's not that serious. But I also like the idea of that being a more robust space for us to talk about stuff prior to the live. Sorry, I thought I saw something on my face. And then to pull from that for the discussion as well. So we have something to kind of start with. Just like today, I had a plan and notes, and now here we are with me just babbling into the void. But you are on the other end of the void, and I appreciate it. Yes. I don't think I don't know that I can track when I started, but I do know Bridgerton was one of my first romances, and I want to say my first series. I do think I read Julie Garwood before I read Julia Quinn. I think, and this is all anecdotal because I don't remember super well because it was like right before I joined Goodreads. So I do have like all the reading trackers from like 8th grade on because we had to track our self-selected reading. And then I got sheets that I would keep track of over the summer too. So in theory, I have a tracking of my reading from 8th grade on, but I don't know at the same time because I should have imported all of that correctly into Goodreads. And it doesn't look accurate in the old stuff, but I'm pretty sure I read Julie Garwood before I read Bridgerton. And I was very into time travel romances as a teen, specifically like the Scottish Highland time travel romances. So moving on from Julia Quinn to like Lynn Kurland and Karen Marie Monning, very into it. Yes, Joanna Lindsay. Because I haven't read nearly enough Joanna Lindsay considering like she was is still one of the big names. Like that's where we get the Fabio covers from, which I had no concept of because of the way these covers have changed. Have we gotten the Romancing Mr. Bridgerton tie-in cover yet? I don't think I've seen it. I'm trying to decide. No, I own a copy of that, but I don't know if I need to read the second epilogue somewhere. Yes. That is what I wanted this to feel like in a lot of ways, yeah. And I'm glad. And listen, my book club also gets my long-winded tangents. Don't you worry. I had one. It wasn't romance book club. We were reading The Once and Future Witches. And is that Alex E. Harrow? And I went on a whole tangent about the tower in that book I'm still annoyed by the tower in that book. I can remember very little about that book beyond how annoyed I was about the tower in that book. So yes, tangents are just something that happen outside of my more concise, edited content. That sounds right. I should get my hands on that. I should get my hands on that. Because I don't think I read the second epilogues until I did my most recent Bridgerton reread because I don't remember when they came out even. Um yeah, I still need to read the Wallflower Christmas book too, which I was supposed to read for book club for Christmas and I didn't. So I think this is important too because this is something I talk about a lot, especially with romance. Like things move so quickly and the romances really do reflect the time they're being written in, which is something that is really discussed in depth on the Fated Mates podcast, which I don't listen to as regularly as I should, but love whenever I do. And so we can enjoy books from the past that maybe our perceptions, conceptions, the dialogue we have around these relationship dynamics have changed, but we can still kind of separate that in some ways and still enjoy things while recognizing that they're not perfect. Um Also like just like the fantasy angle of some things as well. This idea that some of the things we're attracted to in these relationships in fiction are not going to be what we want from our own relationships, but that they can still be something we enjoy fictionally. Like I don't want to be in an enemies to lovers romance. If I dislike someone, I dislike someone. But gosh knows, I love watching and reading about that butting of heads and that banter and the safety of knowing that it ends up well. Like in life, you don't have that safety. So yeah, I don't, more refined thoughts exist somewhere else. That's a, I've been really enjoying like revisiting um romances that have meant something to me in the past. Like even books that weren't that old. Like I talked about this a couple years ago. My romance book club reread or read The Hating Game. So I reread The Hating Game, which I loved when it came out. And I experienced that book so much different the second time around. And I didn't think I was that much different of a person the second time around, but I remember finding it meaner the second time. Um, and it's just fascinating. And like, I still have a lot of love for the book, but I can recognize where there are weaknesses as well. Some of that also may have been shaded by the fact that I really didn't like the second book that I read from her. I don't know. But yeah, it's really interesting to revisit books that you loved at one point of your life in a different point of your life, which I know is just rereading, but like it's a different angle of rereading that I think is really interesting. That was my soapbox of the tangents, potentially. No, that wasn't really a soapbox, I don't think. Sorry. I wasn't sure. So, does anybody else have any more thoughts or anything you want to chat about in this moment? I've enjoyed hanging out and I'm not rushing off by any means. I would be happy to stay here and chat, but I also want to respect your time and not just sit here staring at you, you know? An hour ago. Oh, that's not what I wish. I wish. I used to think I was a fast reader, and now I don't anymore. I'm not a one, there's no better speed of reading, so it doesn't matter, but yeah, there it is. You have to be fast. That being said, as a theater major, there were many a late night where you had rehearsal after classes and you had to get a play. Like, granted, plays read much quicker. But I remember, I think there was one night where I'd gotten out of rehearsal and I had to read 2 or 3 plays by class the next day. And I got them all read. We were also known to close down the library, though. So I feel like I've read at least one of the Mallorys. I just don't remember which one. I feel like there was a pirate book, right? Well, no, it's Joanna Lindsay. There's lots of pirate books. I'm being ridiculous. Or maybe I'm not. If I am misremembering. Sorry, now I'm looking up Joanna Lindsay. Yes. Yes, he is. Talks amongst yourselves on what you think of that. He has a lot more he's a lot more emotionally immature, I would argue, in the book. He is that bro from an MFA. He's a lot more insecure. And again, this insecurity makes sense. But yeah. And I think it all goes back to too, like that being part of we've we can recognize where things are slightly more problematic or not maybe the way we would want them today, but still enjoy them. And then the show is updating a lot of that and taking a lot of those tensions and the tone and the kind of intent that we like from the book and serving it to us as a modern audience, which I think they haven't always gotten. Like, there's still some problematic stuff in the season 1. Obviously, there was a lot of discourse around that. Um, but it seems like we're trying. That being said, do I still miss the bee scene or the idea of the bee scene in its original recipe form? Yes. And we will talk about that in more depth, I am sure, for our Viscount Who Loved Me talk, mostly because I'm steering the ship and I'm going to talk about it. So get ready. Yeah. All of the Bridgerton boys are emotionally constipated. We're going to go with emotionally constipated. Don't be embarrassed. If that's how your brain processes it and if that's what works best for you. Like, I know like a lot of people like talk about um bumping up the speed as like it's not like a value judgment on what you listen to. I know I bump up the speed just because, as you can tell in this moment, my brain is somewhat chaotic. And so I couldn't listen to audiobooks when they were on 1 point speed because I would get distracted. Um, I remember trying those. Does anyone remember the Playaway MP3 audiobooks they tried to make happen that was just one book on like a little personalized MP3 player that you could check out from the library and put your own headphones into? Those were great in the sense that when they came in the library, the librarians wanted me to test them out when I was working there. So I got to just listen to an audiobook while shelving, but the speeding up of the audio had not progressed to where it is today. So I couldn't really do it. It was not my preferred form, but there's no judgment in how you listen to an audiobook. Absolutely not. And I'm not saying that like condescendingly to you. I hope you know. I just don't like people feeling bad about how they read when it's like a silly little distinction. Okay. See, and there's a couple like in terms of family romances, like we've got the Clapis Ravenel series, her most recently finished wrapped up series, eagerly awaiting where she's going next series was a big family series. I think there's like 12 books in that series maybe. And Eloisa James's series, which one was that? I forget the name of the family in this moment, but I think My favorite Eloisa James is in that series. Is another family series if you're looking for things like the Bridgertons too. So that's another good one to add to the list in terms of series with families. The Wilds. That should have been more obvious to me because it was very, very prominent in the books because they were like a non-traditional family. So yeah, excellent, excellent recommendation. I think I've read a Mallory book, but I lost all track now of what I was searching for, and I'm not gonna make you just sit here. I mean, more. Anybody else or any other thoughts? But yeah, the book Colin, the structure of the book, Colin in the book, they're like really shining moments in that book. And there's some moments where I just want to slap Colin a little bit. And the energy that we're getting in that promo of Penelope slapping Colin a little bit with her eyes feels right. It feels right. So I'm excited to see how that comes. And I'm excited to see or to talk with you all about that book. I'm excited for us to talk about The Viscount Who Loved Me because I love that book. And I know we have a beautiful season 2, but there's still a lot in the book that we didn't get, or different variations. There's a lot in the book that we didn't get that that's good. That's good though. But we will talk about all of that more in depth, and we talked about some of it in our last reading sprints too, but the key scene in particular. But yeah, this has been delightful. Oh, it's almost 2. I should probably go get some lunch. All right. Any parting thoughts for real this time? I know I've almost been like almost gone a couple times, but I've just been enjoying myself so much. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think if you turn on the notifications, you'll get alerted. I don't turn on notifications myself, so don't feel pressured in that. I, as a person, really hate notifications. They make me anxious, so no expectation there. But yeah, and subscribe if you haven't. If you want to hang out more, obviously, like if you feel like it. I don't know, but yeah. All right. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. It's been a great discussion. Love it. So yeah, I will put up a poll soon in relation to when everybody is feeling for the Viscount Who Loved Me chat. And do not feel pressured. Obviously, like, you can lurk. I lurk anytime I'm in a live in that chat. If you don't want to reread the book or haven't had time, like, don't feel pressured, but would love to have you and your thoughts there as well. So look out for that. We will get something on the books, and I will talk to everyone then. Have a great rest of your weekend. Yeah. Okay. See you later.